Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? You're starting to see a lot of mock drafts pop up. And a mock draft, I feel like I always have to throw the qualifier. It is what it is. It's, one writer's opinion of an educated opinion of where guys might go in the draft. More importantly, I kind of look at mock drafts with two things in mind. Number one is, where do they have my favorite team, the Saints, picking, which would correlate with projected order of finish this season. And then number two, what position group would they necessarily be targeting? That's what I always find the most interesting. And one of the consensus feelings about this upcoming draft is that it is a deep quarterback draft class. If you consider Caleb Williams and Drake May, who everyone considered at the top of the draft, but then Shedeur Sanders and Michael Penix and Bo Nix and Michael Pratt, and of course Jaden Daniels is elevating. It's just thought to be a great quarterback year for the draft, which is why it was so interesting looking at Jordan Reed's mock draft. And no surprise, he had Caleb Williams going number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. Of course, the Bears have the pick from Carolina. Number 2, he's got Marvin Harrison going to the Arizona Cardinals. And number 3, Sean Payton getting his franchise quarterback, Drake May, to the Denver Broncos. So Caleb Williams 1, Drake May 3. Those are the only 2 quarterbacks that he's projecting to go in round 1. Now, that seems very surprising to me. It's hard for me to imagine that holds just because we just see quarterbacks put at a premium and valued so much. And as you get to the post-season pre-draft process, guys start to elevate through November and then the pre-draft process. So my assumption is we're going to see many more quarterbacks jump in around 1. But as of now, with Jordan Reed, he's just got those 2, Caleb Williams 1, and then Drake May, number 3, to Denver. He had one LSU player, and coincidentally, that one LSU player he had going to the New Orleans Saints. And it's Malik Nabers at number 15 overall. Reed writes, the Saints have a decision to make with Michael Thomas in the offseason, but even if they keep him, they must continue to find offensive playmakers for Derek Carr. New Orleans ranks 28th in yards per play this season. Nabers has been one of the most explosive players in the country this season with an FBS-leading 981 receiving yards. His game complements the downfield ability of Chris Olave, plus he has the versatility to threaten defenses from either the slot or the outside. All of that is true. All of that is 100% true. And number 1, I am thrilled to see Malik Nabers in the top half of round 1. I think that is certainly deserved, and it speaks to the amount of progress that Malik Nabers has made in a national perception heading into this draft. For what it's worth, they have Malik as the 4th wide receiver taken in the draft, but number 15 overall. So still a great spot for Malik Nabers to be if he's in the top 15 of the draft. Now, what Jordan Reed wrote there is true. The Saints could off-ramp for Michael Thomas after this season. Now, he would probably have to be designated as a post-June 1 release, so that way his cap figure, his dead cap number, would drop from $21 million to $9.1 million. So it's really unlikely. I guess actually, let me make sure I have this right. No, they could, forgive me, they could release Michael Thomas, and the cap savings would be $11 million if they released him pre-June 1. So they do have a cost-saving mechanism built in after this season, but if he's on the roster, his cap number is $10 million. His dead cap number is $21 million. So there is a cost-saving mechanism to drop it down to that $9 million range, but still, it would be a very large dead cap number for Michael Thomas if he were not on the roster in 2024. So, yes, you could absolutely move on after this season, but he's got a $3.74 million roster bonus next year guaranteed, and the cap number is higher than that. So, yes, you have a decision to make about Michael Thomas, but Chris Olave will be going into the 3rd year of his rookie deal, and you have him for a minimum 5 years because you're going to pick up his 5th-year option. Rashid Shaheed is an exclusive rights free agent after this season, but most likely you are going to sign Rashid Shaheed after the season as an exclusive rights free agent. So the Saints have 3 really good wide receivers. I think we would all agree right now, based on the conversations we consistently have about the New Orleans Saints, it ain't that you don't have talent on this offense. You've got Thomas and Olave and Shaheed and Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara, and you signed Jamal Williams, and you drafted Kendre Miller, and you brought in Foster Moreau, and you brought Jimmy Graham out of retirement. You got Juwan Johnson when healthy. Like, that ain't the problem. The problem is your quarterback and your play caller. I think we roundly agree on those things. I'm not sure there's going to be any pushback. So while I would love to see Malik Neighbors in New Orleans, again, a vacuum, would I love to see that? Absolutely. I don't think that makes sense because that's not where your need is. Your need, if you're the New Orleans Saints, is at the line of scrimmage because your offensive line is one of the worst in the entire NFL. As a matter of fact, Pro Football Focus has done updates their player grades up to that point in the season. So through 7 weeks of the season, the 3 highest rated players offensively for the Saints are Chris Olave 1, Eric McCoy 2, and Ryan Ramczyk 3. Although we've not seen McCoy and Ramczyk play at the level that they haven't throughout their career in the past, they're still playing at a higher level than most everybody else on the offense. If you look at the 10 worst players on the Saints offense in reverse order, Trevor Penning is at 9, James Hurst at 8, Cesar Ruiz 5, and the worst graded player, according to Pro Football Focus, through 7 weeks is Andrus Peat. So of your 10 of the 9 worst players on your offense, 4 of them are offensive linemen: Penning, Hurst, Ruiz, and Peat. So there's 2 ways to look at this, and it's pretty obvious to look at the Saints offensive line and go, man, that unit stinks. You've got to address it. So use your first-round pick, wherever it is, to snag an offensive lineman in this draft. And, oh, by the way, you've got some really good offensive linemen at the top of this draft. Fashanu, the big offensive tackle from Penn State, they mock him 4th overall to the Giants. Joe Alt from Notre Dame, of course, who Brian Kelly recruited to Notre Dame, they have him 6th overall to the Commanders. J.C. Latham from Alabama, they mock a 9th to the Green Bay Packers. And I believe there was Amarius Mims from Georgia. They mock 14th to the Jets, 1 spot ahead of the Saints. So they have 4 offensive tackles going in the top 14 picks of this draft. So if you're the Saints and you're looking for a franchise left tackle that you thought you were drafting with Trevor Penning 2 seasons ago and you missed, you have options to get that guy this year. So I understand the other side of that coin is you say, well, the Saints are very bad at drafting on the line of scrimmage. You can't draft linemen because the Saints don't draft linemen well. I would push back on that. The Saints have obviously gone very heavy at the tops of drafts at drafting players on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. We tend to highlight the misses. We highlight Trevor Penning. We highlight Peyton Turner, justifiably so. We sometimes look at players as a first-round pick and think, oh, they got to be a Hall of Famer. We used a first-rounder on them. Well, remember, there's 32 guys every year that are taken in round 1. All 32 ain't going to the Hall of Fame. What you should get out of a first-round pick is a starter, period. Well, Brian Brzee looks pretty good so far. Cesar Ruiz is starting for you, and you just gave him a second contract. I'm not telling you Ruiz is going to the Hall of Fame, but he's a starter in the NFL. Eric McCoy, I just told you, is the second highest graded player in your offense up to this point in the season by Pro Football Focus. Ryan Ramczyk has been, when he's right, the best right tackle in football. Go further back. Sheldon Rankins was a first-round pick. Andrus Peat, you drafted him to be a tackle, but he's become a consistent starter at guard. Teron Armstead, Akeem Hicks, Cameron Jordan. Go back. I mean, there's misses. Penning, Turner, who we talked about. Marcus Davenport, I'd put an asterisk next to Davenport because when Davenport was healthy, he was a really good player. He was a fantastic player. The problem is he couldn't stay healthy. We could go back and think about Charles Brown, who you took in round 2, thought out of USC that you might be your left tackle, never worked out. Cedric Ellis was a bust as well. But, I mean, it's a handful of guys. Penning, Turner, Davenport, Brown, and Ellis. And the jury's not completely out, or the jury's still out on Penning and Turner, although it's not looking good. Early returns aren't good. Davenport's an asterisk because he was a good player. It was just an injury situation that slowed him. Brown and Ellis were clearly busts. So I guess my point is, if you use a first-round pick on a player, and they don't have a Hall of Fame career, that doesn't mean it's a bust. Do they become a consistent starter for you? And Andrus Peat, Cesar Ruiz are probably the better examples of players like that. And then you've had guys that have been total hits, like Ryan Ramczyk or like an Eric McCoy, who's been a great starting center for you. Cameron Jordan. Brian Brzee certainly off to a great start in his career. I just cannot justify the New Orleans Saints using a first-round pick on a wide receiver when you've got so much offensive skill talent on this team, and your very clearly glaring weakness is on the line of scrimmage, and you have to address that. One other thing to keep in mind, the Saints do have the Broncos' second-round pick. So the way that they're projecting this mock is the Broncos picking third overall. If the Broncos pick third overall, that means they would also have the 35th pick. So the third pick of round 2, that pick would go to the Saints. So according to this, the Saints would have the 15th and the 35th pick of the draft. There's a lot of damage you could do. Maybe even a franchise quarterback, either at 15 or at 35, with the glut of talent at that position. So while the season isn't when any of us, hasn't started when any of us hoped it would be or expected it might be, when you look at the draft capital and potential for this team, there's reason to think that, provided they make a change at head coach and offensive coordinator and get competent people to run this team, that you're a couple of pieces away from complementing a really good defense with an offense that's more than competent, and you can start winning again. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.